And I'm live. Hello, all you BC WrestlePod nerds out there, and welcome to the dulcet overtones of the All Elite Ensemble Review, your weekly AEW review show here at BC WrestlePod. And tonight, we are going to be covering the Wednesday, January 15th, and the Saturday, January 18th edition of Dynamite and Collision, which was Maximum Carnage. So I am one of your hosts, Mikey. Unfortunately, Professor is preoccupied at the moment, but he said that he may or may not be popping in, so we shall see what happens with all of that. But I am going to hold down the fort regardless and bring you a review of past week's AEW television programming. Before I get into everything, just a little bit of housekeeping. You can follow us all over the social medias at BC WrestlePod. We have an Instagram, we have a Twitter, we have a TikTok, we have a Facebook, we're on YouTube, we're on Twitch, we have a Patreon. We're pretty much anywhere and everywhere. So I'm super excited to interact with you all. So go check us out over there. And of course, we have merchandise as well. Make sure you hit the description to see the link. And then, just go order away. It's such a good time. Oh my goodness. So with that out of the way, let us get into our review. Before I dive into everything piece by piece, I have to say this past week of AEW television was a little bit of a hit or miss. So this week was Maximum Carnage for Dynamite and for Collision. So this was the special television show for AEW on, now that they're on Max and all that good stuff. And we had a Maximum Carnage edition of Dynamite and Collision. So this week in AEW was definitely, in my opinion, booked unevenly. Now, according to some reports, allegedly, Collision's show was changed a lot because lots of people couldn't get to the venue, couldn't get to the arena who were scheduled to be there. So we had a lot of makeshift matches and stuff like that. So I was very curious as to how that was going to affect the show. And in my personal opinion, while I enjoyed a lot of the matches on Collision, a lot of it did feel like an afterthought, throwing it away. I also have lots of questions when we get to certain booking decisions of where we're going with our champions and things like that. But I digress. And then compared to this, I really enjoyed Maximum Carnage Dynamite, which I'll get into in a little bit. But if I had to pick between the two, I would definitely pick Maximum Carnage Dynamite over Maximum Carnage Collision. So we're going to shake things up a little bit. Normally, we start with Dynamite and then go into Collision, but we're going to reverse it this week. So hoping that the professor can be here in time to cover Dynamite with me. So I'm going to do my best to get through Collision, and then we'll get through Dynamite, whether he's here or not. So as I previously mentioned, Saturday, January 18th was Maximum Carnage Collision. Again, the card itself looked very fun. There was lots of changes, so I give the show a little bit of grace, but I have a lot of questions. So let's jump right into our first match that opened Collision, which was a Texas death match, which saw Hangman aggro Adam Page taking on no longer corporate Christopher Daniels. So essentially, as soon as this match was made, I already knew that this is going to be Christopher Daniels' retirement match. Like, you can't just go into a Texas death match with the years of experience as Christopher Daniels and then not be able to walk away without some injuries. And dare I say, this was probably my favorite match of the entire card. Now, granted, this wasn't as crazy as Hangman's previous Dex match, especially against the likes of Swerve Strickland, but I definitely enjoyed this Texas death match. And what I appreciated is that Hangman Page didn't let Christopher Daniels breathe. He was on top of him. He kept going. He wouldn't allow Christopher Daniels to get any momentum. And I love that because for the longest time, I've been saying that we need to continue to make Hangman Page a legitimate threat, him and Frankie as SoCal Unlimited. Now I just hope he enjoys what he does behind the scenes. But congratulations to a really storied career, Christopher Daniels. I love that for you. And you have my kudos. I'm interested to see where we go with Hangman Page next. Because like I said, now that he has this momentum, where do we take him? Obviously, we're not going to put him back with Swerve quite yet because Swerve is currently dealing with Ricochet. But what I'm hoping and what I'm hoping to see is that Hangman Page is going to be utilized, and hopefully we get to put him in some sort of storyline, because giving him this win in a Texas death match and then not capitalizing or doing anything with it down the road would kind of be a waste. And as much as I love this match, if we don't get anything out of this down the road, then this was kind of just filler. But I'm going to reserve my judgment until then, and I'm cautiously optimistic for what's to come next. So next up, we get an in-ring segment with Tony Storm. She's in the ring with Tony Schiavone, interviews her. Now, granted, spoiler alert, because we're covering Collision first and not Dynamite, Tony did win the women's casino gauntlet, and now we'll get a championship match against Mariah May at Grand Slam Australia in February. So Tony Storm in this interview slash promo tells Tony Schiavone and essentially the crowd that, she's excited. She can't believe that she's getting a championship match, that she's always wanted to meet Mariah because she's always heard good things. She's a fantastic wrestler. And so she hopes that she gets to talk to her before their match. And so this sets up for what we're getting next week, is that Mariah May and Tony Storm will come face to face. Whether that's going to be in the ring or in a pre-taped segment, who knows at this point. But again, I really love this third layer of Tony's character. First, she started with Tony Time. Then it became the Outcast Tony Storm. Then Timeless Tony Storm. And now we're back to Tony Time, Tony Storm. Whether this is truly the route or this is all a ruse by the Timeless One, I personally don't care whichever way it ends up going, because Tony is fantastic. Her character is probably the best of any women's wrestler right now. And I know that's kind of blasphemous to say, but man, you can't deny her talent. And I'm looking forward to the confrontation between her and Mariah May. It's going to be fantastic. So I'm excited. I think hopefully the segment goes really, really well. And I look forward to what comes next, as we have about 3 weeks until Grand Slam Australia. So it's going to be a good time. Next up, when I saw this on the card, I was like, this is kind of a random match. Now, granted, this is not the first time that Collision will throw Ring of Honor talent onto AEW programming, only for them to essentially lose to the AEW roster. But at this point, I have made peace with it, and we have moved on from all of it. So we end up getting the Undisputed Kingdom, which is Roderick Strong, Adam Cole, Bebe, and Mr. Kyle O'Reilly, taking on Shane Taylor Promotions, which is our Ring of Honor pure champion, Tiger Style Lee Moriarty, and the Infantry. I thought it was a perfect match. I love Tiger Style. I love the Infantry. I think they are fantastic. But ultimately, this match was used to get the Undisputed Kingdom a win and build them to whatever we're going next. If you tuned into our World's End review, you know that for me, because I don't want to speak for my other co-hosts, it felt really weird the way that after Adam Cole lost to MJF, that all of a sudden everyone's back together, everyone's buddy-buddy, we're all cool again, it's all kumbaya, if you will. And on the one hand, I understand that we kind of finished that feud, so that way we could be done with it. But again, now it's where do we go from here? I want to take a side tangent real quick, because I have seen this argument over the last 6 months or so that AEW isn't for long-term storytelling, and Tony Khan allegedly has gone on the record in interviews saying that he doesn't need to do long-term storytelling. So I just want to add my 2 cents into this, and then I'll get into the match itself. Personally, for me, I can understand that line of thought to a certain degree. I know that stories don't need to be 6 months to a whole entire year. We have seen other companies tell a story that long, and it started to die out, because then, not to compare other promotions, but like WWE, we had a 4-year Roman Reigns Tribal Chief storyline. And as much as I was there for the ride, by the end of it, I was like, you have gone through everybody on this roster, and I'm kind of getting bored of where we're going with this. So I am afraid for the Undisputed Kingdom that's essentially where we're going. We're just going to keep putting them in matches, rack up some wins, but have no plan as to what their next move is. But back to the match itself. Again, all 6 of these men are really good. Obviously, Kyle, Adam, and Roddy are the vets in this match. And then Tiger Style and the infantry have some years of experience, but are definitely the rookies, if you will. And I will admit that I appreciate that this match was more back and forth than I thought it was going to be. But ultimately, the Undisputed Kingdom does pick up the win, and good on them. They got a win. And again, I'm hoping that we introduce something of substance to them, because having a match to have a match does not do anything. We need to have some sort of story. Even if you aren't going to tell a long-term story, Tony, you can at least do like a month or two feud leading to the pay-per-view. It doesn't need to be that crazy. TNA does it all the time. Like we have multiple feuds going on at the same time, and we have different matches at different pay-per-views, but we always end up getting the characters involved in different ways. So hopefully AEW will pick up on that and get that together, because as much as I love the Undisputed Kingdom, I need something of substance for them, because putting them in matches just to put them on TV is not enough for me at this point. We move on as we get technically, okay, I'm going to be honest. So essentially this is a squash match. This is the Murder Machines taking on Top Flight. My, how Top Flight have fallen. I need to know if Dante and Darian did something backstage that they're being punished for. Because how did they go for being in a faction with Lio Rush and Action Andretti and Layla Gray to getting a match to potentially face the tag team champs, to losing to the Lio Rush and Action Andretti, to then them getting squashed by the Murder Machines? I will say this. I have said the same thing when it came to Private Party. The fact that Private Party was 5 years in the company and now they're barely getting a tag team championship run. I need Top Flight to also get a championship run. We need to revitalize this tag team division. And while I don't necessarily like Top Flight getting, squashed to the Murder Machines, at least the Murder Machines are adding to this tag team division. And honestly, I'm cool if they want to go after the tag team championships, or if they want to go after the trios championships with Kyle Fletcher or Takeshita. But it just hurt my heart watching Top Flight kind of lose in about 3-4 minutes. This match is what it was. Top Flight got some high action in, but ultimately Murder Machines would do their power moves and ultimately pick up the victory here. So Murder Machines pick up the victory. Woo. There's nothing more to add to all of this, I'm going to be completely honest. But I love this match. Anybody who has seen our AEW our Dynasty pay-per-view review, or the New Japan Wrestle Kingdom 19 review, I'm a sucker for good, strong style wrestling. And this was giving me stiffness. It was giving me no sells. I love that Okada has finally gotten back into what I loved about him and started to show a little bit more of his New Japan self. Ishii is fantastic. I'm happy that he's back on my screen after being absent, after being attacked by the Learning Tree a couple months back. Love it. Fantastic. This match was so much fun. I dig it. Okay, so this match is a result of Harley Cameron being misted by Julia Hart on Dynamite's Casino Gauntlet match. And so we end up getting Harley Cameron versus Julia Hart. Say what you will, I love Julia, but man, Harley Cameron has been growing on me. She is wrestling on Dynamite and Collision and Ring of Honor, always wanting to get those reps in. I love her crazy character. Her energy is fantastic. The fact that she sings her own theme song is fun. But of course, unfortunately, nobody can beat the Dark Princess of the House of Black. Julia Hart does pick up the victory against Harley Cameron, but not after Harley Cameron giving it a good college try. This was fantastic. I love this match. This was fun. Okay, where do I even begin with this one? So before I get into the match itself and give my thoughts about this whole entire thing, I want to kind of give a little bit of context for this match. So immediately after last week's Dynamite, so at this point of the review, not the 15th, but the 8th or 9th or so, Dynamite, we get the announcement that we will be getting after Dynamite Maximum Carnage, we get the announcement that we would be getting this 12-man tag team match. And the internet, specifically the internet wrestling community, the IWC, was not having it. So I want to kind of give my 2 cents in all of this. So on the one hand, this has a lot of the peeps I like. So initially I wasn't going to complain. And I didn't really complain by the end of this match. However, this is where my critique of this match comes into play. When we have a large storyline where we have a enemy or a faction have issue with another group or other individuals, AEW tends to always put them in multi-man tag team matches to get everybody on the card. And again, I am here for good chaos. I am a chaos gremlin in my spare time. I love it. But AEW has been doing too many of these multi-man tags. We could have easily just had, honestly, you could have just had the Death Riders and Rated FTR in a non-title match. Rated FTR could have won. They could challenge for the Trios Championships. But again, you have the Death Rider and the Learning Tree on one side, and then you have Rated FTR, Powerhouse Hobbs, and the Outrunners on the other side. The problem with all of this is that Rated FTR has 2 feuds going on with Death Riders and the Learning Tree. I feel like that's too much. It's too much for me. I'm a person that believes that we should focus on one feud at a time, because when you start having people feud with multiple people, unless it is done carefully, it never works out. And the booking decision here didn't make a lot of sense. I feel like it was just a ploy to get everybody on the card, and it worked because ultimately, like I said, I enjoyed the match. I just don't know why we had to have this match. Had control chaos. I was happy to see Powerhouse Hobbs pick up the victory here. But again, this match kind of goes with my issue that I have with AEW programming. Not everything needs to be a multi-person match. You could have simply done a 3-on-3. And I'm like, what are we doing with the Trios Championships? And why is Pac never involved in this? Like, he's always in his wrestling gear. Why is he never in the ring? Why is he not wrestling? Is he hurt? Like, what's going on? And I'm going to be honest, Tony Khan, the less I see of Chris Jericho on my screen, I will be much happier. I'm just putting it out there. But again, the match itself, it was fine. I enjoyed it. I'm just really perplexed why we continue to have these multi-man tag matches. We didn't need to have 12 men. We could have broke this up into 2 3-on-3 matches, one to open and then one to close. I'm just saying. So that concludes AEW Collision. So now let's rewind back to Wednesday. And now we are going to be covering AEW Dynamite Maximum Carnage. So for this week only, we started with Collision, and now we're going to rewind back to Dynamite. So Dynamite kicked off with the in-ring return. Well, at least the AEW in-ring return is because he already made his appearance at Wrestle Dynasty at the beginning of January when he had his match against Gabe Kidd. So it was fun, and I was hooping and hollering. I think it's great. So the match itself, man, Brian Cage, I love him. He continues to do amazing in these types of matches. Brian Cage, to me, doesn't have any bad matches, and he ends up always being able to work with his opponents very well. And of course, I'm never going to complain about Kenny Omega. I know people say he's overrated, yada, yada, which, I understand, because Kenny Omega has become a big standard of wrestling to some parts of the world and to certain fan groups. But I like Kenny. I think he's cool. I think it's fantastic. Kenny does pick up the win here. Brian Cage did a good job of trying, but ultimately it was not enough. And this was a fun match to open to. So we move on, because now we hear not from this image is funny. From now on, I will not call him Ricochet. I will call him Rick, because this man does not look like Ricochet. This looks like a whole different person. So this is not Ricochet. This is Trevor. So we're going to call him by his government name, Trevor. So next up, we hear from Trevor, who 2 weeks ago stabbed Swerve Strickland with a pair of scissors. And now we're going to hear from him. Trevor gets into the ring. He begins to talk. He wants to show us what he did to Swerve 2 weeks ago. But then we are hit with Swerve went on whose house? Swerve's house. So Swerve Strickland's music hits. Trevor thinks that Swerve is going to come on out. So he is waiting for Swerve in the ring. But Prince Nana comes in with a chair, hits him on the back with it, and then immediately goes into the Nana dance, which was hilarious. which then brought out Swerve Strickland, who was looking to beat that ass. So Trevor then jumped out of the ring, jumped through the crowd, and made his way through the exit doors, running from Swerve. I will say, I have loved the aura that Swerve has brought since becoming a heel last year, and just how intimidating he is. And he crazy. He gonna come and find you and he gonna hurt you. So I'm excited to see where this feud goes. Hopefully we get a couple of matches out of it. But I love this for Swerve. And I also love this for Ricochet too. See, we get the Nana and we get the Swerve. So this was a random match. So we have the Hurt Syndicate. So this was Bobby Lashley, Shelton Benjamin, and MVP taking on the AEW Tag Team Champions, Private Party, and Mark Briscoe. I have two issues. Number one, I love Mark Briscoe to death. I truly do. He did not need to be in this match. We could have put somebody else that has beef with the Hurt Syndicate. But I get it. Hurt Syndicate beat Briscoe up last time. Private Party came out with the save. And so thus we have this match. That was my first issue. The second issue is now I'm for sure thinking that Private Party is not long to hold these titles because Mark Quinn does get pinned in this match by the Hurt Syndicate, allowing them to pick up the victory. And it sucks. Now, the Hurt Syndicate could have gotten the Trios Championships, but who knows what we're doing with all of those. So I'm a little bit worried next week or tomorrow night for our boys of Private Party, because I don't know if they're going to walk out of Dynamite as champions. I hope so, but it's kind of crazy. Even if the Hurt Syndicate don't win, it's crazy that you have them challenge for the title so quickly. I don't get it. This is weird. This match was fine. I didn't necessarily think it was bad, but again, I have questions about where we're going. So hopefully Private Party gets to keep their titles tomorrow night, but time will tell. This was also another match that we didn't need to have. First and foremost, this feud has been going on forever. It has been stretched out way too long, and now we're finally kind of getting the quote-unquote resolution of all of this. But do we, though? Because we have Christian Cage versus Hook. This match ends in a DQ because, the patriarchy get involved, beat up on Hook. I will say, though, even though the match was not the greatest, I screamed like a little girl because we got the return of Moa, No Mames Mimosa Joe, and my King Shark, my Yakuza, character is back in the business, is back in AEW, and I am ready for Samoa Joe to knock heads. And he kind of gets to do that because he's facing Nick Wayne this upcoming week. So this is going to be interesting. The match itself was doo-doo. I did not care for it. But the return of Samoa Joe had me popping and screaming, hooping and hollering like a little schoolgirl, like a school child. Like, I was having a great time. I'm so happy that Joe is back. I missed him. And so here's hoping that he just decimates anybody and everybody. So now we probably have my favorite match of Dynamite Maximum Carnage, which is the Women's Casino Gauntlet match. So at stake here is a shot at the AEW Women's World title at Grand Slam Australia. So as we determined from the previous Dynamite, Chris Statlander would start at number 1. And if you are unfamiliar with the Casino Gauntlet match in AEW, 2 women would start out in the ring. And then at random intervals, they would get into everything. At random intervals, we would have another woman appear and insert themselves into the match. And the match was over when somebody gets pinned, tapped, or submitted. So this was a phenomenal match. This had a lot of great spots, and there was this was smart because they utilized a lot of good women, because we had Chris, Julia, Willow, Harley Cameron, Tony Storm, Jamie Hayter. But when I tell you, when the Megasness, Megan Mother Tuckin' Bane made her entrance, I, as a GCW person, lost my absolute mind. I think Megan Bane is super talented, and I love that she was in this match, and she got some really good spots. But ultimately, Tony Storm would pull out the victory. So at Grand Slam Australia, it is going to be Mariah May versus Toni Storm for the AEW Women's World Championship. This was my favorite match because this was a pretty decent women's match. This actually went through like 2 or 3 commercials, which was great. Picture. I still wish we got more than one women's match a week, but whatever. I'm interested to see if Mariah walks out of Australia as the champion or Toni wins, but we shall see what happens with all of that. I think this match is going to roll. We get into our main event. This was also really good, and this was in contention with the Casino Gauntlet match to be my match of the evening for Maximum Carnage Dynamite, in which we have our AEW World Champion, Jon Moxley, defending his championship against Powerhouse Hobbs. What I loved about this match is Powerhouse Hobbs was sold as a credible threat, and even in defeat, he still looked good. He had to deal with multiple interferences, multiple attacks from the Death Rider, still kicking out of things. And the fact that the ref had to stop the match, he didn't get pinned, he passed out. Really good way to make Powerhouse Hobbs still look strong in defeat. I love that Powerhouse Hobbs is now getting this push since returning from injury, and I cannot wait to see what Powerhouse does for 2025. Get this man a championship, get him a title. I want to see this. Man, this main event almost was my match of the night, but I think I gave it to the Casino Women's Gauntlet because I love the women that were involved and we had some fun spots there. It was just fun. And sometimes what constitutes as my criteria for the best match or the match of the night for me is the in-ring was great and it was a lot of fun. So that is going to bring us to the end of this week's All Elite Ensemble review. I appreciate everyone who just tuned in to this one. It was a solo run this week, but I'm excited to be back next week with myself and the professor to cover another exciting week of AEW programming. For myself and everybody here at BC WrestlePod, remember, take care of yourself, love one another, stay iconic, and more importantly than anything, you always deserve to finish your story. We'll catch you later, but until then, adios.
Thank you so much for tuning in to another Vibe Tribe production. What's gonna happen next time? Well, you're gonna have to tune in to find out. But until then, remember, take care of yourself, love one another, and as always, make sure that you keep the good times rolling. Thank you for being here, and we'll see you next time.